Hello, everyone. Mr. Chu here in my home office talking about success again. This is week 3 of our success challenge for 2024. As you can see, I'm in my home office. You can see my sign that my daughter made, my Mr. Chu sign that I hung in my classroom for years. There's my math clock. And I've got some notes up here on the board for me to refer back to while I'm talking. So this is week 3. And in week 1, I have written up here on the board in black, week 1 talked about no one drifts to success. You're not going to just all of a sudden drift there. You're going to have to set your goals, write them down, commit them to memory, and then think about them all of the time. That was week 1, and I challenge you to do that. Remember, this is 52 weeks of learning to be successful. And in 1 year, you should have all of the things to put your goals into action. And then in blue here, I've got week 2's learn how to live your own life. It is your life. Live it. Use your mind that God gave you to make sure that no one interferes with what you want to do with your life. All right? So there's going to be outside interference all the time. Push it to the side. Look at those written goals that you've committed to your memory and don't let anyone get you off track. Okay? This is week 3. Week 3 has some other things added in. So let's see what we added in this week. So in red here, it's called Motivate Yourself to Achieve Success. So this is part of our 52-week challenge. So what I want to talk about today in week 3. All right, being successful doesn't necessarily mean that you're necessarily going to be wealthy, millionaires, billionaires. It may just mean that you have reached your goals. So let's look at an example of someone like that. Albert Einstein. He was one of the most successful mathematicians and physicists of all times. And yet he wasn't necessarily a millionaire or ultra wealthy. But would you call him unsuccessful? The things that he did pretty much changed the world. Dr. Einstein knew what he wanted to achieve, he knew his goals, and he did everything he could to set in motion to attain them. And he was a successful man. There's a huge difference between the person who merely wishes and wants to be successful and the person who decides to be successful and writes down their goals and develops a plan to achieve them. So I refer a lot to Napoleon Hill and this book in particular that he'd written. And he has a book, his main book is called Think and Grow Rich. And in week 3, he has a quote that says, all things are possible to the person who believes they're possible. So you have to believe it. So after you write down your goals, commit them to memory, use all your energy to achieve them, and think about them all the time. And especially don't let anyone discourage you because there's always going to be naysayers out there. So in week 3, Napoleon Hill talks about 2 successful people. So an example of a successful person who worked to achieve his goals, the first one he talked about was Henry Ford. Now, Henry Ford was an uneducated man. He was considered by some to not be very smart. He was even called stupid at one point, and there was a huge lawsuit. You can research him, very, very interesting. So he knew what he wanted, and he worked hard to achieve his goals, even when those people were telling him he couldn't do it. All kinds of stories about Henry Ford, about when he had his engineers invent and come up with the first 8-cylinder engine out of one single piece of metal block. Researching, very, very interesting. He is one of the most interesting people that you can think of. He also was once asked if he honestly thought that they would build roads everywhere so that he could take his Tin Lizzie and drive it around when everyone was pulling horses on the dirt roads. His vision created a new way to manufacture that moving assembly line. He also brought all kinds of workplace improvements to better workers as well. And he made the automobile affordable. Another example of a successful man, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, I had a hard time finding the correct pronunciation, is John Wanamaker. He founded the first true department store in Philadelphia, and under one roof you could buy just about anything. On its first day of business, he sold less than $25 worth of boys and men's clothing, but after one decade, he had annual sales of over 2 million. So he was successful. He was the first to use a price tag. Used to, before his time, you would haggle with the price and try to determine the price. He was the first one to put a price on things. And then he also allowed people to return items and get a cash refund. He was the first to do that. And then the last thing that he was the pioneer of, he was the first one to place full page ads in the newspaper. So both Henry Ford and John Wanamaker were examples of people who committed their goals to memory, didn't let anyone's negative commentary stop them, and educated themselves so that they learned what they needed to. Napoleon Hill closes day 3 with his famous quote, "Whatever the mind of man can conceive and believe, the mind of man can achieve." He encourages you to start where you are from this point today and move forward. Finalize your goals, use your mind to set a plan into motion to achieve them, and educate yourself to attain your goals. We'll see you next time in week 4.